Hey, this month we're talking about isolation in our Hope Month series. We're talking specifically all month about the broken place of isolation. Now, we've always considered isolation to be something that we're concerned about. We have from the very beginning of when we formulated the notion of 6 broken places. But good Lord, has this thing come to the fore lately, isolation and what's happening with us around all the things that are happening due to the pandemic. And I want to be honest with you, Scripture doesn't really address this broken place specifically. It never says, do this to end isolation and that kind of stuff. But I'm just going to tell you that the letters to the churches and the way that Jesus treats people throughout the Scripture, I mean, they just say clearly over and over that the church and people who are followers of Jesus are supposed to be taking care of people who are lonely. Why? Because God's primary image of all of us together as a church, I mean, there is the image of the body, but there's also the language is almost always family language. And so we're supposed to be looking for those lonely people outside of the bigger group, the people who are isolated for various reasons, and make sure that they know that they are part of a family. Now, this is a lot harder than it sounds, and I'm going to be honest, in the passage that I preached on in Romans 12, the end of it, when it says we're supposed to practice hospitality to other people, we're supposed to be eager to help those who are in need, that word does not have anything to do with hospitality like we think of it. This is what it was. If you saw somebody on the street who was traveling through town who was a stranger and they didn't have any place to go and nobody to take care of them, then you would open up your life and your home to them and bring them in and make them a part of your family for the time that they were staying with you. And I got to be honest, I can't think of anything that's harder. The word that we're called to in this passage is to be living sacrifices. There's so much to say about that. I don't even have time to go into it, but just remember the word is sacrifice. And it's a sacrifice when we give everything over to God and open up our lives to those who are lonely. Now, I just want to get to the bottom line of the sermon. The bottom line is this, that we as followers of Jesus are called to be proactively looking for ways to draw in others who are lonely and isolated. I just got a call this week from a dear friend who lives in Florida now who knew nothing about what I was preaching on this week. And he told me that his wife, and I've known this, she had an aneurysm. She's been in a nursing home for 4 years. She's 68 years old. She has very little physical ability, function left. And he was crying on the phone, and he said, what he said, I'm just going to read. I wrote it down. He said, please tell your people that there are millions of people like my wife who haven't had the touch of a loved one since early March. And then he said, and those who love them haven't had much interaction with anybody else either. I'm just going to say, this passage at the base of it is telling us to get out there, to step up. What Paul says to the Romans and what I'm saying to you is that we are God's means to healing isolation, and it may be a sacrifice for us. It may be a sacrifice for us. But that's what we're called to do. We're to be eager to be healing this broken place. Now, I've seen the questions you're going to get for small groups. They're great questions. They're going to start the wheels turning. So I'd say read this passage again. If you haven't heard my sermon, that's okay. You can figure it out by just reading it. But it'd be okay if you read my sermon or heard my sermon. But I want you to notice how selfless we're to be, what Paul calls us to. And then I want you to think of ways together how you can be healers of this broken place. Thanks.